I think right around 1858, early 1850s anyway. U.S. Geological Survey comes out to Port Orford, which is...
Rick Harrison has been the face of Pawn Stars for years, turning a small Las Vegas pawn shop into one of the most popular reality shows on television. But recently, fans have been asking the same question: what really happened to him? Behind the success, there have been shocking headlines, personal struggles, and surprising twists that many viewers never saw coming. Today, we're taking a closer look at what happened to Rick Harrison, and the truth might just surprise you. The early life of Rick Harrison. You see, Rick Harrison didn't exactly grow up living the high life. He was born on March 22, 1965, in Davidson, North Carolina. But his family didn't stay put for long. When Rick was just 2, they packed up and moved out to Las Vegas. Why Vegas? Well, his dad, Richard Old Man Harrison, had served in the Navy during Vietnam, and when that chapter closed, he wanted a fresh start. Vegas was the kind of place where you could reinvent yourself, take a gamble, and maybe even build something big. That's where the pawn shop dream started to take shape. Now, Rick's early years weren't exactly easy. As a kid, he developed epilepsy, and by the time he was 8, he was having seizures constantly, sometimes up to 12 a day. It got so serious that doctors told his parents he might not live to see adulthood. Because of his health, Rick ended up spending a lot of time stuck in bed. To pass the time, he leaned on books, and that turned into a lifelong love of reading. One series that really grabbed him was The Great Brain by John D. Fitzgerald. The main character, Tom D. Fitzgerald, was this clever 10-year-old kid from Utah who always seemed to cook up money-making schemes. That character left a big impression on young Rick, and you can see how it rubbed off. He started thinking about business and hustling from a pretty early age. By the time Rick was 13, he was already hanging around his dad's pawn shop, picking up the basics of the trade. School, though, that just wasn't his thing. He ended up dropping out in 9th grade and decided to try his luck elsewhere. And get this, his first hustle was selling photocopiers door to door. Doesn't sound glamorous, right? But the kid was pulling in about $2,000 a week back in the 80s. That was serious money for a teenager, and it showed he already had that entrepreneurial mindset. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. At 17, Rick's girlfriend Kim got pregnant, and so he decided to get married. Now, despite a miscarriage, they soon had their first child, Corey, better known today as Big Hoss on Pawn Stars. Rick married young and tried to make it work, but it wasn't easy. The epilepsy medication he was taking messed with his weight and energy. His marriage started to fall apart, and by the time he was 23, he found himself divorced, broke, and raising 2 boys, Corey and Adam, while relying on food stamps. That could have been the end of the story, but Rick wasn't the type to give up. He started hustling however he could, even flipping fake Gucci bags at swap meets just to keep some cash flowing. It wasn't exactly a dream job, but it kept the lights on. Then, in 1981, his dad decided to open the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop on Las Vegas Boulevard. Rick dove in headfirst, helping to build the place up from a little local shop into a must-visit spot for collectors. By 1989, he was officially a co-owner, and the store was dealing in everything from rare coins and Civil War relics to classic rock memorabilia. Pawn Stars and the rise of a Vegas icon. Jump ahead to the 2000s, and Rick gets this idea that most people probably would have laughed off. Make a TV show about the day-to-day grind of a pawn shop. He pitched it to a bunch of networks, even HBO at one point. But it wasn't until 4 years later, when the History Channel picked it up in 2009, that things took off. Pawn Stars premiered on July 19th of that year, and almost overnight, it became a massive hit. More than 600 episodes later, it's still one of the longest-running reality shows out there. The formula was simple but addicting. Rick handling deals with his trademark poker face, bringing in experts whenever something rare came through the door, and sprinkling in some quirky Vegas characters along the way. Who could forget the time someone walked in with a supposed copy of the Declaration of Independence, or that guy who tried to pawn a pterodactyl skull? Classic Rick move. Offer less than the seller wants and keep a straight face the whole time. But what really made the show click wasn't just the items, it was the family dynamic. You had Old Man Harrison, the tough Navy vet with no patience for nonsense; Rick, the cool-headed negotiator; Corey, the son who was still learning the ropes; and, of course, Chumlee, the comic relief who somehow turned into a fan favorite. It didn't feel scripted. It felt like you were watching a real family run their business, with all the laughs, eye rolls, and arguments that come with it. The show didn't just put Rick on the map, it turned the gold and silver pawn shop into a full-on tourist destination. Suddenly, there were lines out the door, people buying t-shirts and souvenirs, and fans flying in from all over just to snap a photo inside the store. These days, Rick's net worth is estimated between $9 and $16 million. Not bad for a guy who once started out hustling swap meets just to pay the bills. Rick Harrison's toughest chapters, what fans don't know. Here's where things get a little more serious. For all the laughs and wild deals we've seen on Pawn Stars, the Harrison family's also been through some really tough times. Rick's dad, Richard Benjamin Harrison, better known to fans as the Old Man, passed away on June 25, 2018 at the age of 77 after battling Parkinson's. That loss hit hard. The show aired special tribute episodes, and Rick even got a tattoo in his honor, a Navy anchor with USN across it, a nod to his father's service. For Rick, it was his way of carrying his dad's legacy with him every day. A few years before that, Rick had remarried. In 2013, he tied the knot with Deanna Burdett, a legal secretary he met at a friend's wedding. The ceremony was pure Pawn Stars style. Danny Coker, yep, from Counting Cars, officiated, and Chumlee even played ring bearer. They celebrated in Hawaii, surrounded by friends and family. And for a while, it seemed like a fresh start. But by 2020, the marriage ended quietly. Both sides said it was amicable, just another chapter closing in Rick's life. And then came the hardest blow of all. On January 19, 2024, Rick's middle son, Adam, passed away at just 39 years old. Adam wasn't on the show. He preferred staying out of the spotlight, working in construction, and spending his time fishing and diving. But to Rick and the family, he was deeply loved. He was Corey's brother, Rick's son from his first marriage, and losing him was devastating. Addiction was involved, and that's never an easy subject. The cause was tough to hear. Adam's death was ruled an accidental overdose, according to the Clark County Coroner's Office. There was no foul play, just a heartbreaking accident. Rick shared the news on Instagram with just a few words: "You will always be in my heart. I love you, Adam." No long statement, no media tour, just a dad grieving in his own way. The truth is, Adam had been struggling with addiction for years, something Rick has admitted openly. In a March 2025 interview with Graham Bensinger, over a year after losing Adam, Rick spoke about how the guilt lingers. "You second-guess everything, every day," he said. Should he have pushed rehab harder? Could he have done more? Those questions never really go away. He explained that Adam went through cycles of sobriety and relapse, but fentanyl has changed the game. It only takes one mistake, one bad batch, and it can be fatal. Rick hasn't just sat with that grief, though. He's tried to channel it into action, speaking out about the fentanyl crisis and even pushing for tighter border controls. He's met with politicians, shared his perspective, and in a more unexpected twist, even struck up a connection with the mayor of Tulum while spending time in Mexico. It just goes to show how grief can push you into places and conversations you never expected. Family feuds and health battles. Now here's a chapter of Rick's life that really surprised a lot of fans and reminded everyone that even reality TV families have their messy moments. In 2022, Rick's own mother, Joanne Harrison, filed a lawsuit against him over the pawn shop and family assets. According to the court documents, she claimed that Rick had her sign over her 51% stake in the business while she was still recovering from a coma back in the early 2000s. The idea that someone could lose control of a business while incapacitated naturally raised eyebrows, and fans were shocked to hear it involved their favorite pawn shop family. Joanne didn't stop there. She also alleged that Rick had stopped paying her a monthly allowance of $25,000 in 2020, and that he failed to provide proper financial records for the shop. From the outside, it looked like a perfect storm of family tension mixed with business disputes. People who had only ever seen the Harrison family laughing, haggling, and joking on screen were suddenly confronted with a much more complicated story off-screen. Rick, for his part, strongly denied the allegations. He maintained that his mother was being influenced by others who had their own agendas, and that the lawsuit didn't reflect the reality of their relationship. The entire situation has been a tense and sensitive issue for the family, and it's considered one of the most dramatic off-screen developments in Pawn Stars history. Rick's health has also been something people are curious about, and for good reason. He's been living with epilepsy since he was a kid. Diagnosed with focal onset aware seizures at just 8 years old, Rick spent a lot of his early years stuck in bed. It was a rough start, but it had an unexpected upside. That time in bed is actually how he developed a love for history. His mom would read to him, and before long, Rick was devouring books, learning about everything from ancient battles to obscure trivia. That early passion for knowledge stuck with him and ended up shaping the way he approached life and eventually his career. Dealing with epilepsy also made Rick cautious and thoughtful, but it gave him drive and focus. Those same traits helped him build the gold and silver pawn shop into the Vegas landmark it is today. Nowadays, his seizures are less frequent, but epilepsy still plays a role in how Rick lives and works. It influences how he manages the shop, how he approaches risky decisions, and even how he parents his kids. It's a condition he's learned to work with, not against. And it's just another part of the story behind the man fans know from TV. New beginnings and the everlasting pawn shop legacy. But if there's one thing Rick Harrison has always shown, it's that he doesn't stay down for long. No matter how many curveballs life throws his way, he finds a way to bounce back. And 2025 has already brought him some happier chapters. In March, Rick surprised fans with some big news. He's engaged to his longtime girlfriend, Angie Polushkin. The proposal itself couldn't have been more Rick. Instead of going to a fancy jeweler, he picked out the ring right from the gold and silver pawn shop. It wasn't just any ring either. It was a vintage emerald-cut diamond that had once been appraised on the show at around $10,000. Talk about poetic. The pawn shop, the business that defined so much of his life, also ended up playing a role in this new chapter. Rick shared the announcement on Instagram with a simple caption, "She said yes," alongside a few pictures of the two of them smiling together. Now, here's the funny part. This wasn't actually Rick's first proposal. The first time, he popped the question at home in his living room. Sweet, sure, but apparently a little too casual. His daughters roasted him for it, calling it the most unromantic proposal ever. And honestly, they weren't wrong. So Rick decided to redo it, this time pulling out all the stops in Chile. The second proposal was a whole lot more memorable. And judging by the photos, Angie definitely appreciated the upgrade. On the business side, the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop is still pulling in visitors from around the world. Even after hundreds of episodes of Pawn Stars, fans keep showing up, hoping to spot Rick, Corey, or Chumlee behind the counter. But Rick hasn't just been focused on the shop, he's also been pretty vocal about what's going on in Las Vegas lately. In interviews, he hasn't held back about the state of the Strip. He says prices have gotten insane and that the city is still dealing with what he calls a COVID hangover. According to him, hotel occupancy is down around 6.5%, and July 2024 saw about a 12% drop in visitors. For a city that lives and dies by tourism, those numbers sting. The Gold and Silver Pawn Shop is still going strong, and it's just as much of a Las Vegas landmark as the Strip itself. Located a stone's throw from all the neon lights and casinos, the shop sees about 1,200 visitors a day. Tourists, collectors, and curious passers-by, all hoping to spot a piece of history, or maybe catch Rick or Corey in action. Rick's still very much involved, though these days he's not always behind the counter negotiating deals. He's taken on more of a brand ambassador role, making appearances, consulting on unique items, and occasionally stepping in as an appraiser when something really special comes in. And speaking of special items, the shop still has some jaw-dropping treasures. For example, Rick once bought a NASA Apollo lunar lander training thruster for $13,000, and it's now listed at $25,000. There's also a Boston Red Sox World Series ring loaded with diamonds and sapphires, priced at $78,500. And if that doesn't catch your eye, how about an authentic samurai sword from the 1800s? Between the historic memorabilia, sports collectibles, and one-of-a-kind oddities, there's never a dull moment in the store. Still, Rick's optimistic about where things are headed. One of his favorite topics lately? Food. He's convinced that the classic Vegas buffet is on its way out, and that barbecue joints, steakhouses, and big food halls are the future. It kind of fits his personality, too. Straightforward, no frills, practical. Buffets may have been a Vegas staple for decades, but Rick says it's time to move on. Meanwhile, back at the pawn shop, the treasures keep rolling in. Part of the fun of Pawn Stars has always been the unexpected, and the shop still sees its share of you-won't-believe-this items. Rare collectibles, bizarre oddities, and things you'd never expect someone to pawn. It all ends up crossing that counter. Rick still gets that same spark when he spots something unusual, and fans love that nothing surprises him anymore. Of course, with fame comes rumors, and Rick's dealt with his fair share of internet nonsense. In early 2025, social media went completely wild with rumors about Rick Harrison. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, you name it, were all flooded with posts claiming he had been arrested and sentenced to life in prison on multiple felony charges. Some of the videos even included photos of Rick in an orange jumpsuit, which only made the story seem more believable. Naturally, fans panicked, and the rumors spread like wildfire. But here's the truth: it was all fake. Fact-checkers, including Snopes and Times Now, confirmed that the images were AI-generated and that the entire story was completely made up. No FBI raids, no court cases, no prison sentence. None of it was real. Rick is not in jail. He's very much alive, still running the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, still filming Pawn Stars, Do America, and still doing what he does best: spotting rare items, haggling deals, and keeping the family business going strong. To end on a lighter note, Rick Harrison is still really close with his longtime friend and co-star, Chumlee. These two have been filming together for years, and it's clear they genuinely like each other. Chumlee, whose personality really shines on Pawn Stars, recently shared a fun clip on his Instagram account Chumlee Collects, featuring Rick. In the video, Chumlee gives Rick a Pokemon quiz, holding up cards and asking him to name the creatures. Chumlee is clearly passionate about Pokemon. He even competed in the 2024 Pokemon World Championships in Honolulu, Hawaii. Rick, on the other hand, isn't quite as invested in catching them all, but he humors his friend and joins in on the fun. Despite all the fame, the drama, and the ups and downs over the years, Rick still has those friendships and moments of simple joy that keep things light. And honestly, it's easy to see why fans love watching the dynamic between him and Chumlee. It's real, playful, and unmistakably a part of what makes Pawn Stars so entertaining. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? Rick Harrison's life is a lot like one of the treasures that pass through his pawn shop. Worn in some places, shining in others, and always carrying a story that keeps surprising you. From a kid battling epilepsy and selling copiers door to door, to a reality TV star navigating fame, family, and heartbreak, he's faced challenges most of us can barely imagine. And yet, here he is, engaged, advocating for causes he cares about, and still doing what he does best: spotting value, negotiating deals, and sharing pieces of history with the world. What's your favorite Rick moment? The shark cage? The Tesla coil? Let us know in the comments section. Also, like if this hit home, share if you've got a family tale of resilience. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.